Ah, Nintendo. The Japanese giant has given us more gaming memories than any other developer in history, despite what rabid PS4 fanboys might tell you. From humble beginnings to industry leaders, and with more than a few missteps along the way, Nintendo is as synonymous with the industry as Queen is with rock and roll. Trying to rank all of their hardware across multiple generations is no small feat, and I will admit from the outset, there are a lot of people far more qualified than me to tackle this project. However, I possess ample time and a lackluster career, so I took it upon myself to present to you my own personal ranking of each system. You'll have to take note of that little word there, personal. This is entirely subjective and in no way reflects a console's overall quality or impact when it was first released. I simply calls it like I sees it, and your own list will probably look completely different to mine. But that's cool! We're all fanboys in the end, so feel free to leave your own ranking down in the comments. Maybe even a fun little story about your history with Nintendo. I do like stories, particularly erotic ones. We start down in the doldrums with the Virtual Boy languishing all the way at number 15. It was fairly academic that this was going to be the case, as it remains to this day one of Nintendo's biggest botches. Equal parts ambitious and cumbersome, the Virtual Boy was rushed to the market in 1995 in order to put full focus on the upcoming Nintendo 64. It certainly looked like something from the future, or at least what we thought things from the future would look like back in the 1960s. You'd stick your face into those garish goggles and it would suck your soul right out of your eyeballs! Not literally, but after trying out its library of only 22 titles, you'd wonder if perhaps that would have been preferable. For context, people have turned their nose up at the Switch for its lack of games, despite having over 1,300 titles to its name. The Virtual Boy was dead on arrival, really. It had an okay but short Wario Land, a weird update of Mario Bros called Mario Clash, and a middling Mario Tennis game that was most noteworthy for giving all of its characters little white shoes. That's cute. Except for in-game, of course. Their shoes were red. Their faces were red. Their everything was red. Welcome to hell, boys and girls. Virtual hell. So technically, I'm not sure whether or not this next one counts in the listing, but the ever-reliable Wikipedia cites the Color TVGames series as being Nintendo's first hardware, so I guess it gets included. Wikipedia also once stated as a point of significance that Maria Kanellis has large breasts. And you know what, that's true. I'll trust them on this one. Basically, these Japan-exclusive consoles housed various games that were popular at the time. The Color TV Game 6 had 6 variations of Pong. The Color TV Game 15 had 15 variations of Pong. And the Computer TV Game had Computer Othello. It was the worst of them all. As you might expect, I've never actually played a Color TV game myself, nor seen one out in the wild, so my knowledge of them is extremely limited. I was a little too young for the Atari, so these simplistic games, though revolutionary in their time, don't particularly wow me. But hey, Racing 112 was the first game that Shigeru Miyamoto worked on, so it has that going for it. At last, we begin to wander into familiar territory with the next entry on this list, the Game & Watch series. These single-game handhelds were really the first sign of Nintendo's potential, brought to us by Gunpei Yokoi, the man who would later innovate industry staples like the Control Pad, the Game Boy, and Barbie Sparkling Ice Show. Some of the Game & Watch titles are still pretty playable to this day, with Oil Panic and Fire being particular highlights. My personal favorite was the one where you had to navigate Garfield around various obstacles until you ate enough lasagna to power yourself towards the moon! Wait, that wasn't a Game & Watch title? Next you'll tell me that Gunpei Yokoi didn't make Barbie Sparkling Ice Show! Don't feed me lies, feed me lasagna! Alright, here's the part where everyone gets mad and feeds my gizzards to the hounds! Yes, I am aware of the fact that the Nintendo Entertainment System remains one of the most beloved consoles of all time, and yes, I completely understand this adoration. But just as it was with the Atari, the NES just came and went right before my time. I was a plucky 90s kid. I was full of Kool-Aid and tubular catchphrases, man. My earliest experiences with an NES game wouldn't come until Super Mario All-Stars on the Super Nintendo, and you know, I liked them, but I ultimately preferred Super Mario World anyway. The NES represented a tectonic shift in the gaming landscape, no longer limited to single screens or simplistic objectives. Now we had massive, sprawling landscapes and iconic franchises like The Legend of Zelda and Metroid. To this day, a lot of these games remain incredibly fun, but they are very much a product of their time and can't be judged in a vacuum. Mostly because the cartridges won't fit. No way, that should have made it past the first edit. Pretty much any game that came out on the NES was improved upon just a generation later, when the technology finally caught up to the ambition. But if you're after a raw, unbridled challenge devoid of modern hand-holding, then you can revel in retro classics like Battletoads and Mega Man 2. You'll die a lot, but you'll learn a lot too. I swear I don't have a vendetta against retro gaming. I just like my things to be bigger, bolder, and visible at night. Hence, the original Game Boy claims an underwhelming 11th place. I myself was a little late on the handheld bandwagon, primarily because I never really went outside long enough to necessitate the need for a portable console. In the rare times I saw the sunlight, I was unarmed on the gaming front. This all changed in the winter of '98, however, and it was all due to one simple title. That was the year I officially caught Pokemania. I spent hours and hours and hours huddled over my Game Boy Pocket, poring over those little pixelated beasts in my quest to catch them all. Once I started with my Bulbasaur, there was no stopping me, despite the fact that I was an idiotic kid who didn't appreciate the benefits of type variation. My Venusaur may not have won many competitive battles with its moveset of Solar Beam, Razor Leaf, Leech Seed, and Sleep Powder, but it most certainly won my heart. Aww. And don't forget, this was also the console that housed the second generation of Pokemon games in Gold and Silver. Because though they may have been optimized for the Game Boy Color, they were still playable on the OG Game Boy. Consider it a technicality if you will, I'm certainly shameless enough to do so. Outside of Pokemon, I didn't really delve into the backlog of the Game Boy's long history, and indeed the only other games I owned were Donkey Kong Land 2 and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 back from the sewers. And yeah, they were a hoot too, but I will be completely transparent when I tell you that the Game Boy's position in my Nintendo history is based almost solely on those kooky pocket monsters. Except for Charizard, because screw that guy. Aw, poor Wii U, just looking at it makes me sad. I don't want to overstate just how much of a disaster this console was for Nintendo, especially when you compare it to the phenomenon that was the original Wii, but my collection of games really tells you everything you need to know. Not including virtual console titles, I own Nintendo Land, Super Mario 3D World, Super Mario Maker, Star Fox Zero, New Super Mario Bros. U, Pikmin 3, and Super Smash Bros. For Wii U. And yes, all of these are good games. Star Fox haters be damned, but this is not an impressive lineup by any means. I was so unmoved by the Wii U that I even skipped games that I would have otherwise pounced on in prior generations, like Mario Kart and Donkey Kong Country. Moreover, I was rewarded for that apathy when both of these games received superior ports on the Switch. It was a combination of many factors, really. Not only was the Wii U desperately lacking third-party support, how many third-party games did you count in my collection? But my life was changing. I was a grown-ass man by this time. I didn't have the time to be sitting around and playing video games. Sure, you could play it on the gamepad if you wanted to leave the TV free for others to watch, but if that was the case, why wouldn't I have been watching TV too? It'd be kind of rude to just be sitting there playing video games after all. Snarling at the others in the room if they got too close, perhaps. But let's talk highlights. Smash Bros. For Wii U may have the worst title in the series by far, but it is arguably the best game overall. It is simply bursting at the seams with content, and come on, man. Cloud in a Smash Bros. Game? Heaven on earth! Nintendo Land was a tantalizing look into what the console could have been. and the Mario Chase and Luigi's Mansion games in particular are hilariously frantic. Overall though, the Wii U remains a fixture in the living room for one reason and one reason only. And that is to play Netflix. Aw hell yeah!